Strange Fish. Written and narrated by Milton Schorr. All my life, my heart has yearned for a thing I cannot name. Andre Breton. Part 1. Chapter 1. The boy has his line in the water, and through it he can feel everything. The gentle pull of the current below, the creaking of the kelp beds as they swirl in the green water, and the clicking of the cray as they tiptoe their way over rock and shell, hungry. The surface glitters. He closes his eyes against the glare. Here in the northern channel, between the outer rocks of the island, all is feel but for the slapping water against the hull of the little boat. All is the line. Around his bare feet 5 fish lie, 4 of them spookvis, ghost grey and flat and blunt. They stare, eyes sightless mirrors to the sky, while the 5th, a strange one, continues to gasp. The boy looks at it, scowling. The fish is grey also, but there is a shimmer between its scales, a rainbow rippling in the rain. He has not seen such a fish before. It lies quiet, its gills fanning the empty air. Strange fish, he mutters into his sparse beard. He turns from his catch to the sea. The sentinel rises above him, a 10-foot tower of black rock marking the edge of the island cluster that he has known always. Beneath it, on the green water, a tiny white V trails from his line. He allows his eyes to relax, the V melting into the clouded water. Once again he feels down, all of his attention diving to the hook and its meat, and through it, searching for a sign. The ocean breathes. Something plays in him, a flitting in his stomach, a tightening. The line falls from his finger. The corner of his lip tugs upward, ever so slightly. There. A slow pull and then nothing, but it is enough. Twee farm, 2 fathoms beneath him, a spookvis has the bait in its sucking mouth. He can see the little fish in his mind's eye. Tasting quietly, eyes open as the pleasure of the wet meat seeps through. Inside the bait is the hook, but the fish does not know it. Eat, he murmurs. Eat, agrees the fish. He knows his quarry is still testing, tasting. When the line begins a longer pull, so slight that only instinct will show it, he will know the fish has begun to turn and swim. Then he will strike. He watches the line, listening, waiting. A chill runs through him. He looks up to the horizon. A bank of white is laid out, reaching from the sea halfway to the mid-morning sun. He frowns, looking back down at the fish between his feet. Only 5. The fog is moving at speed. When it hits, the fish will dive away and there will be nothing for it but the slow way home, watching for the island's rocks rising from the gloom. His eyes return to the water and his ears to the gentle creak of the line on his finger. There it is, that pulling, lighter than air, that slow pressure of a sucking mouth. Eat, he murmurs, raising his eyes to the approaching fog. Eat, hums the little fish. Bang! The line raises through the green water, his rubber-covered fingers curling as it cuts the little one below. Swish, 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 swish. He hauls the fish in, his arms slapping against his rubber-suited sides, the glistening coils of the line gathering at his feet. There it is, that faint silver in the green, a flashing disk down there. He pulls, now seeing the tail, the fin, and the eye, as it comes fighting to the surface with the hook in its mouth. The creature bulges beneath the veil, magnified, until he reaches down and takes the line in a turn around his wrist and plucks it from the water. He swings it clear and lets it slap down on the thwart, crisscrossed with the ears of his knife. Another spookvis, as grey and flat as the others. He lays a hand to its gasping and twists the hook from its mouth. It falls to the bottom and sets to dancing against the smothering air. As quickly he turns to his motor and jerks it to life. He swings the boat in an arc beneath the sentinel, setting its bow to home. Only 6. The words drip through his mind as he speeds across the water. Only 6. 5 are spookvis, the last still wet and kicking. But the 6th is different, a strange colour pulsing through its flesh. It lives still, one eye watching the fading sun. Hours later, the fog has burned away and the little town of the Bay shimmers in the summer heat. The boy makes his way along a rutted track through the veld. He pulls against his cart. With only 6 in the bed, the frame is heavier than the load. The cart's wooden wheels dig into the sand. His dusty toes dig in also. The sand is hot between them. Just 6, he mutters through his twisted lip. It would have been easier to carry them, but the cart had to be taken home anyway. The smell comes first, a blend of salt and fish and diesel. And now he sees it. Ahead of him rises the fabriek, the factory, a rash of low buildings clustered near the water, not far from the high tide mark. The old jetty stands rotten among the rocks in the lapping sea, unused for 20 years since the trucks and the highway came. He winds his way between the low fynbos, hardy plants built for drought and salt and sun. He leans against the weight of the cart as he crosses the boundary line. The sand lies soft and thick in a bank here, a jerk to pull it over, and then the wheels take to concrete and the cart lightens. It clatters behind him. He stops to let a forklift pass. It whirs on its electric wheels with a crate of salted harde held high, and then on he goes, into the shadow of the open sorting floor. A row of women are cleaning and filleting a meager catch of harde for the salt racks. Thin fingers of fish slip down the line and through their deft hands. He keeps his head low, his eyes on the ragged floor. He knows they see him. All of them, looking at the one pulling his cart, who would call himself a fisherman. Through his brows he looks up and to his left. There is the office above the factory floor. The door is ajar. He marks that. His knuckles tighten on his pull bar. An open door means one thing. The owner of the fabriek is here. The big weighing scale lies ahead of him. Once he has logged his catch, he will be able to leave. He begins to hurry. And, how goes? The boy stops, caught. It is Sali the storeman who has spoken. Sali, the keeper of the scale. He does not answer. Instead, he merely nods while keeping his eyes to his bare feet. Is die chokkie leeg? Is the cart empty? Asks Sali, walking up and peering into it, his notebook and pencil in hand. The boy does not respond. He stands stoop-shouldered, the yoke of the cart hanging loose across his chest. And the sea? Nothing good, whispers the boy. Hell no! Sali gives a short whistle and taps the side of the cart. Look at that! The boy scowls, his eyes fixed to his feet. Johnny, you got a rainbow fish! A rainbow fish? That's a good fish, says Sali, reaching down to prod the shimmering creature. Hell, look! It's still breathing! The boy peers into his cart. In the bottom lie his 5 spookvis, dead. But the 6th? Its gills fan the empty air while his eye looks up to them. To the boy it seems to see them and see beyond them. Rainbow fish, that's a good-eating fish. Sali leans in close to the boy, speaking low. You want to trade it? I'll give you a pallet of harde. Sali nods to the woman, their hands raking fish, and then he glances up to the office with its door ajar. Your weight will look much better. The boy studies the bright fish. He shakes his head and instead reaches down to scoop it up. He opens his tuck box fixed to the front of the cart and slips it in. Sali shrugs. It's a good-eating fish. You will have a good supper tonight. The storeman claps the boy's shoulder and smiles into his eyes. Old Sali. The boy knows this face well. He is about to return the smile when Sali frowns. Watch out, he whispers. The boy turns to look. In the bustle of the sorting floor, a man is lumbering towards them. He is dressed in the clothes of the men of means of the Bay. Big felt-lined boots, tiny denim shorts, a khaki shirt and a leather wide-brimmed hat. But that is where the similarity ends. He towers over the folk of the sorting floor. His boots are twice the size of their own. His head and shoulders loom above them. And despite his size, he moves with an alarming grace. The women go quiet as Uncle Mike Morkel, MD of the Handspy Fishing Consortium, stalks down the line. A bear in shorts and shirt. Johnny, how goes it? Rumbles the giant as he reaches the two of them. He drops his large and hairy hand onto the cart, rocking it. How was the day? The boy does not answer. He has some spookvis, says Sali. The huge man peers into the cart, his sharp brown eyes looking down at the 5 lying dead there. "The fog came in," whispers the boy into his wispy beard. "I went all the way out to the point, before sunup." "The catch is very shit," says Sally, nodding. Uncle Mike nods also, placing a massive hand between the boy's shoulder blades, letting the warmth of his great palm seep into the bones. "5 spookvis. This is your worst catch yet." The big man sighs. "How am I going to feed everyone?" The boy stares at his bare feet. Scales are crusted between his toes. "I will try the reef tomorrow," he whispers. "Maybe I'll have some luck." Uncle Mike nods and then turns his gaze back to the 5 fish. "A poor size. Weigh them and come back to me tomorrow." "I'll need some petrol," whispers the boy. "The reef is far." "No petrol. You can't expect petrol when you bring me this." There is a brief pressure from the hand on his shoulder, a pressure that creaks the bones. The boy freezes, waiting, hoping, and then the pressure is gone. He turns to look, and there is the great figure of Uncle Mike striding from them, his body rising to the angular gallows of his shoulders. The boy sighs, the dread in his stomach passing as the big man climbs the steps to the office and stoops as he steps inside. Sally raises her hand to pat the boy's shoulder. "The fish were not biting." "Nobody caught good today." Sally reaches into the cart and pulls out the inner crate, dumping the 5 spookvis onto the scale. The needle on the dial barely flickers, and Sally jots their weight down. "I tried. It's the sea." Sally flicks the fish one by one onto the flicking line. "Could I get some petrol for tomorrow, Sally? The reef is far." Sally glances up at the office, the door ajar. "I'm sorry, Sian. He will know." "But how much did others catch?" "You can't expect petrol when you bring only 5. "But did anyone else catch?" Again Sally glances up at the office, with the door ajar before flicking his eyes to the boy. "No," he mouths, before turning back to his paper. "Come on, Sally, from the back store," whispers the boy, reaching out to tug at the man's sleeve. Gently, Sally pulls it away. "Enjoy your rainbow fish. It's a good eating fish." The boy sighs. He turns his cart, his eyes to the concrete of the sorting floor, and then he heads home. The boy's hut stands by the side of the track, full of roof and window and door. Before the dilapidated building is a patch of sand that once contained grass, and around that is a sagging fence and a rusting gate. Behind it an apple tree rises, its leaves sparse in the summer heat. He lets go of his cart to rest under the old, patched awning. He unclips the tuck box, feeling the weight of the rainbow fish inside, and clicks through the rusted gate. "At least I have supper." He places the tuck box on the rough table outside and pulls his cutting board near. In the sparse rains of summer, he prefers to cook outside and sometimes even to sleep, wondering up at the stars. He takes his knife from its sheath and runs it across his thigh, cleaning the blood-flecked blade. With his other hand, he unhooks the clasp of the tuck box and reaches inside, bringing the rainbow fish out into the light. He places it on the table, and his blade pauses in the air. Still, the fish is breathing. As air wafts across its ribboned gills, the little fish looks up at him. "Strange," thinks the boy. "Eat?" he asks the little fish. It does not answer. He peers at the thing and sees that in its flesh there is more to be discovered, a sheen between the scales. He shifts the cutting board towards the sun. The fish comes alive, flapping in the light, its flesh filled with the colors of the sky and sea, shimmering from tail to gill. "What are you?" asks the boy as he traps the fish with a gentle hand and brings it back to the cutting board. He places his palm on its flank, quieting it with his own quiet. He slips his blade beneath the jaw of the little fish and pulls it through to the tail. He pushes the mess of intestine, lung, heart, liver, and bowel aside and cuts across the tail and beneath the gills, opening the fish up to the sky. He takes it by the tail and dunks it in a bucket of seawater standing ready, cleaning it, and then he dumps the guts in the bucket also, bait for tomorrow. He leaves the little fish filleted, placed beneath a net to ward off the flies, and then he collects fresh water from his 2 big drums round the side of his hut and returns to wash down the cart. With a tattered sack, he scrapes it clean of scales and blood, and then he douses the sack in fresh water and leaves them to dry in the afternoon sun, placing his freshly washed knife beside them. He climbs from his torn trousers and his tattered shirt and douses them also. Naked, he returns to the side of his shelter, where the fynbos comes creeping down from the hills, and washes his blood-caked hands before once again putting them in the clean water and washing his body. Finally clean, he lies down to rest on his mat within his hut, away from the still burning sun. He dreams of the deep. Later, his appetite takes him back to the fish, and he lights a fire beneath the blaze of the Milky Way. He grills the little fish and eats it, looking up to the stars. He turns his attention to the remains, scooping them out of the water. And then he pauses. Among the soft organs of the fish is something hard. He turns to light his gas lamp, and by its hissing white light he sees it, almost round and flickering with all the colors of the fish itself. A pearl. He plucks it from the mess in his hand and rolls it in the center of his palm. He lays his eye to it. In it, the future dances. The boy smiles. Beneath the table, amidst the muck of its guts, the head of the fish lies still, its dead eye looking up to the moon.